request respected Maulana Seyed Imran Taqvi to come forward and deliver tonight's lecture. Takbir, Nara Risalat, Nara Haidari, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
ثم الصلاة والسلام وتحية الإكرام على الرسول النبي الأمي
ما شاء الله
الذي أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه سراجا منيرا.
سبحان الله.
سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الغر الميامين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: والذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا ينفقونها في سبيل الله فبشرهم بعذاب أليم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات عليكم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq of gathering and getting together, inshallah, on yet another Thursday night, where we gather around and we talk about the Ahlul Bayt. The Quran is recited, the Adiyya are recited, the Kalam of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam is presented. And this is not without tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is destined for this to be a risk on this night. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to maximize this risk. Because many of us have many ni'mat, many blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but because of a lack of tawfiq or a lack of awareness, of a lack of preparation from our part, we're not able to maximize the different blessings that Allah has blessed us with. So, like many other nights, the Shab Jum'ah, this night should not be like every other night. This is the night when we have a tradition in hadith, in riwayat, that the amwat, those who've left this world, they return to familiar places, looking for people to pray for them, especially their family, especially their loved ones. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq. While we're in this world, we pray for those who've parted or who've left this world, and inshallah when we go, people pray for us. Please recite the Fatiha. We'll start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت The ayah I recited is from Surah Tawbah. It's ayah number 34. وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَها فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Allah says in this verse, and those people who collect gold and silver, those people who collect, yaknizuna means to treasure it, they hide it away, they hoard gold and silver, and وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ, and they do not spend it in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Bashirhum, usually when you talk about bushra, bushra is good news. Al-indhar is to warn them, al-indhar is to remind them. Al-indhar usually comes with a threat or a warning or a severe punishment to follow. And bushra or bashara comes when Allah talks about Jannah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the rewards, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about blessings. But in this particular ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as some ulama have said, a very loose word, a very base, low word is, the tone is sarcastic. The tone on a very base level is sarcastic. Those people who hoard gold and silver, who do not give who do not give it out in our way, the Prophet give them glad tidings of an adab, of a difficult time ahead, of Allah's wrath to come. When you read about this ayah, also mentioned in the riwayat is the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam says, as-sadaqatu tudfi'u al-bala, and tudfi is te dal fa'in, tudfi'u, atfa yudfi'u is bujhana or extinguish. As-sadaqatu tudfi'u adhab ar-rahman. As-sadaqatu tudfi'u adhab ar-rahman. Up here, what is interesting to notice is the word adab does not come with al-qahar. The word adab does not come with al-jabbar. The word adab does not come with al-muntaqim. It says as-sadaqatu tudfi'u adab ar-rahman. Because it is understood, it is a given. When you take the name Jabbar, there is a punishment to follow. When you take the word name Muntaqim, it is no joking matter, it is something that is very serious that is to follow. When you say Al-Qahar, a very strong point is mentioned here, where Allah's ghadab is mentioned. But never with the word Adab do you see this word Ar-Rahman. Never with the word Adab you see the word Rahman. Yani, the Adab of Al-Qahar, something you can imagine. The Adab of Al-Jabbar is something expected. But when it is time for the Rahman to give Adab, when it is time for Ar-Rahman, the only solace when you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, you count on this name, which is the Atam Ummul Asma. Ummul Asma. He says, when it is time for the Rahman to give adab, what adab would that be? What type of adab is that? But the Imam says, as-sadaqatu, giving sadaqah has the power to extinguish the adab of the Rahman. Giving sadaqah has the power to extinguish the adab of the Rahman. And this, inshallah, will be the topic of discussion for the next few minutes. Please recite Salat Muhammad. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all the mu'mineen the tawfiq to do well, to do good, and stay on the right path, and continue the path of the Ahlul Bayt. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Everything we have is from the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Everything we received is from the Ahlul Bayt, through Ahlul Bayt, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is for us to return as much as we can. We will never even out. There will never come a point where we feel we've done and the net balance right now is zero. That will never be the case. But as much as we can return, that is the responsibility on all of us. An example about infaq or giving sadaqah. A man comes up to the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, Imam Sadiq, Imam Kadhim.
فرجهم.
A poor man, an unseeming man, someone, if I was to break it down on a social hierarchy, someone who's not very well off. And he tells the Imam, he says, the Imam, I am having issues at home. I'm having problems at home. There's no peace at home. There's always fighting. It's a toxic environment, either because of money or any argument. There's no reason for it. But when I go home, there's no peace. The Imam said, when you pray your salat at home, recite the azan loudly and let the sound of the azan reverberate in all corners of your house. Let the sound of the azan to be heard in all corners of the house. When you heard the adhan, the voice of the words of the adhan will reverberate around your house, inshallah your problem is fixed. He left. The man who was sitting in the company of the Imam, he is the narrator of this riwayah. The riwayah is interesting. A man asked the Imam the question. The narrator said, I also tried it. My problems were solved as well. Not only were the person that the Imam told him his problems were solved, even I, when I tried it at home, my problems were solved. But sometimes the problems are not solved with only giving an adhan. If somebody has taken wealth from somebody else and he's hoarding it and keeping it, if he has money that belongs to somebody else and he's not returning it, adhan will not solve this problem. You can do thousands of adhans at home, but as long as there's mal al-ghasb, someone else's property in your house, with not your house, example, and you don't plan on returning it, azan, saum, salat, this will not solve your problem. This also comes down to sadaqah. We were discussing this and I thought it was an important matter. If I was to discuss it with the brothers, inshallah, everybody is to benefit. When you are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sometimes you check, you see people, especially who work on the in the collection departments in different Husayniyat, they have a box to, some people come and they give a donation and then they have to give them a receipt of some sort. So they say sometimes we see £100, sometimes we see a bigger donation or smaller donation. One of my teachers used to say, don't be impressed with the amount that you get, because it is very possible that the one who gives you 1,000 has 1,000,000 at home, and the one who gives you 100 has another 100 at home. One of them is giving you half their wealth. One of them is giving you half their wealth, and one of them is giving you only a percentage of their wealth. So when you deal with people, understand how you deal with them. The Imam alayhi salatu wasalam says, Laysa minna, he's not from us, who greets people according to their social status. He greets the rich, but he does not greet the poor. The Imam says he's not from us. He does not belong with us. He's not with us. That he chooses who he greets. He chooses who he says salam to. He chooses who he shakes, whose hand first. My brothers and those sisters listening, we do not control risk. The risk is not a result of our efforts. If risk was the result of efforts, donkeys would be much richer than most human beings. If the risk was a result of effort, donkeys would be more prosperous than some human beings. Risk is Allah's designation. Allah decides who gets how much they get. We do not decide that. I've spoken some of this in a previous program or a previous lecture, but I'd like to insist because sometimes some children have some questions in mind, the young people have this question in mind, especially given the circumstances that we're going through in the world. A question was asked. They said, we're doing this procession, we're carrying out protest, raising our voice. What do you think the end will be? I'd like everybody to pay attention. If anybody has a question, please ask them that question. When we do what we're supposed to do, will this be effective? If I am to do this, will I get the ideal response? Will I be successful in what I do? Azizan iman, My dear brothers and those sisters listening, your job is to do what you're supposed to do. The result is always in Allah's hands.
MashaAllah.
The result is never in your hands. Because if the result is also expected, then let Allah do something that Allah wants to do. Everything you want to sit down and decide, this is how we want it, and this is how exactly we do it, and this is the end result. So what is Allah doing in this picture? You realize what it is, your wadifa. Sit down with yourself first and foremost.
Wow.
Then sit down with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on your musalla. Ask Him for inspiration. Come up with a plan. This is what I plan on doing. Sit down with your brothers, sit down with the mu'mineen, sit down with your teachers, and discuss the matter. Is this my wadifa in this time right now? Should I be doing this? Or is it something else? Many people flow where the wind takes them. If the wind is going left, they'll follow suit and say, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. A man who does not know where he's going does not know who he is himself. A man who's able to identify who he is, he knows his value, he knows exactly what he wants to do, when he wants to do it. And the mu'mineen of the Imam, the companions of the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, they're not people who go when the wind goes left and then when the wind goes right. Many a times you see the companions of the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam standing in opposition to the wind. It doesn't matter where the wind takes Salman. It doesn't matter where the wind takes Malik al-Ashtar. It doesn't matter where the wind takes Abu Dhar. They know exactly who they are and they know their purpose in life. If people are lost, it's because they are not able to identify the purpose in life. And I'm not talking about this particular crowd, but it happens to a person in my position. People come up and say, Maulana Sahab, ye wali baat pad dijiyega, unko ye baat sunna bahut zaruri hai. Maulana Sahab, please recite this point because he needs to hear it. मैंने कहा आज majlis ghibat हो जाए. This is the case. It happens sometimes. मैं यहाँ की बात नहीं कर रहा. But sometimes that is the case. Maulana Sahab, talk about this because that person does this. मुझे तो नहीं पता था, आपने बता दिया. इसका गुनाह हम दोनों अब साथ लेके जाएंगे क़याम के. इमाम अलैहिस्सलाम कहते हैं मौला कायनात सलावत भेजिए. हासिबू अनफुसकुम क़ब्ल अन तुहासिब ग़ैरकुम. Make your own hisab before you make hisab of somebody else, because yet somebody else has somebody else to make hisab of. Don't worry about the other. Many a times people sit down and when they talk, again, I'm not pinpointing anyone. You should not go outside and say, "Maulana Sahab, inki baat kar rahe the," because wohi baat ho jayegi. It's not the case. This is a very generic discussion. Brothers and sisters listening, we are all flawed human beings. When it comes to human beings and humanity, we are all flawed, we are all in mistakes, we all have issues. Most of them we don't know that. See, if somebody knows that they have cancer, God forbid, inshallah, those who do have cancer, may Allah give them shifa. And inshallah, Allah protect the mu'mineen. One time somebody knows he has an illness that will end his life in a few months. He still has a chance to fix it. But what do you say about someone who does not even know that he has an illness that will kill him in 5-6 months? What kind of blindness is that? Sometimes I know I'm blind to something. I am blind to something. But what if I don't even know that I'm blind to something? This is one of the reasons of the Majlis of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Why? And this example I used the other night as well. The example is this. When they talk about the Ahlul Bayt and the attributes of the Ahlul Bayt and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, some people will ask questions. Imagine if you were to light up or ignite an oud or an agarbatti or something that purifies the air and it gives a beautiful scent to this room. And 5 or 10 people walk in and everybody enjoys it, because who does not like the good smell? You walk into the room and you enjoy the good smell. Very pleasant. And a man walks in, no remarks, no regards, sits in the corner, and you ask him, how did you find the smell? He says, I don't smell anything. I don't smell anything. Ab now he says, "Bhai, sabko to aa rahi hai, aapko kaise nahi aa rahi?" How do you not smell it? He says, "No, you have to prove it to me." Ab how do you prove to him that there's a pleasant smell in this masjid? But you decide, you know what, let's start proving to him. अब आप जितने भी tools आ सकते हैं बताने के लिए, उसको दिखाने के लिए कि भाई there is a pleasant smell. It's like, no, I can't smell it. Please prove it to me. Please prove it to me that there's a pleasant smell in this masjid right now. There will come a time when you have to go up to him with all due respect and tell him, Sarkar na kharab. The problem is not with what's happening in the room. The problem is you have an issue that you need to resolve. You've lost a sense. You have lost a sense. मुश्किल दलील और इस्तिदलाल ये नहीं है. मुश्किल आपकी ज़ात के अंदर है. इमाम को इल्म गैब कैसा हो सकता है? सरकार अपने नफ्स को देखिए. इमाम मासूम कैसा हो सकता है? सरकार अपने नफ्स को देखिए. इमाम को खबर कैसे हो सकती है? सरकार अपने नफ्स को देखिए. Any time when you have a riwayah and you say, this riwayah does not look right. This riwayah does not look right. Why? Because it does not make sense. Nonsense यहाँ पे हो रहा है. Because sometimes you have to admit, when you come to the door of the Ahlul Bayt Islam and you sit down and you inquire and you inquisition and you question, consider that there might be a problem in my understanding. Maybe one of my senses is not that strong. Maybe one of my senses is not that strong. Maybe I do not see it, and the Ahlul Bayt see it. How would you identify that? See, when we are discussing science and knowledge that is acquired through our five senses, I can go to school, I can go to university, I can go to a lab and acquire science. Tomorrow, I will have a cure for one illness. Day after, I will discover something. The third day, there's an experiment performed and there's a new thing explored. This is all material sciences. But what do you do on the day when you need to know about things that are immaterial, that belong to the alam al-wahi, that belong to the dimension of the soul, that belong to the malakut, that have nothing to do with the nasut? Who do you then go to? Which scientist will have the answer to this? The scientist will tell you, this man has been put into this grave, there is no pulse, he's clinically dead. The Imam looks at him and says, the malakut have come now. The malaika have come now. They're asking him a question now. Man rabbuk, man nabiyuk, ma kitabuk, man imamuk. The Imam will tell you now somebody in his house has recited Fatiha, the adab has removed his qabr. Who gives you this information? Where do you find this information? Who will educate you in ways of the samawat? Understand the words of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I know the ways of the heavens more than the ways of the earth. Not because Ali's knowledge is limited, but because the world is limited. This earth is limited. This dunya wa ma fiha is limited. Ali knows the ways of the malakut, the limitless life. Ask Ali ibn Abi Talib for what is unlimited. Ali will tell you the secrets of the unlimited. Ali existed before most of existence exists now.
Narai Haidari!
So who tells you about risk then? Who defines risk for you? This is what we started with. Who will define risk? The person who does the accountsman, an accountant will tell you. An accountant will never have good news to give you. An accountant will never have good news to give you. हमेशा आप लॉस में जाएंगे. अगर अभी प्रॉफिट में जाएंगे, कल के लॉस का आपको आज बता देगा. This is an accountant. This is how an accountant operates. He has to be very real with you. लेकिन आप उनके पास बैठे इमाम सादिक अलैहिस्सलाम. It is only someone who has an insight into the unseen can tell you, give me 5 and Allah will return 50.
Wow.
Give me 5 and Allah will return 50. No scientist can come up with this. How is this happening? The concept of risk may be understood, but they can never define the concept of barakah. What is barakah? How do you define barakah? the act of giving, if you were to look at the riwayat, my brothers and sisters, if you were to look at the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, nothing is a more blessed act than feeding your brother Muslim or your brother Mu'min. The amount of khair that you get in feeding another person, la yuhsa. You cannot think about the results of it. An example, we all know the story from the Quran. Nabiullah Ibrahim, Khalilullah, father of Ismail. 2 guests came to his house. Nabiullah Ibrahim, 2 guests came to his house. He slaughtered a baby calf and made kebabs. A baby calf for 2 people. Because the Imam has told us there's no israf when you host and you have a guest in your house. There's no israf. Give them the best of food and do not make them uncomfortable. How much food do people eat? He slaughtered the whole calf. Nobody asked Ibrahim, "Arey aap Nabi Khuda hai, aap namaz shab padh lein." You are a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why don't you do mustahab salat, or why don't you fast? Why are you busy with these guests? This is the maqam of the guest in your house. This is the maqam of feeding people. When people come to visit you and you give them food, this is the teachings of Nabiullah Ibrahim alayhi salam. On his own, he goes, he slaughters an animal, he prepares the kebab, and he comes back and he presents it in front of his guests. The sawab of feeding people. People, Allah says in the Quran, in this ayah number 32, those who are gathering gold and silver and they do not make infaq in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give them glad tidings. Give them the good news, they are going to hell, in my words. Paraphrase. Give them the good news, they are going to hell. And in the riwayah, Imam Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi the word, it escapes me, the word used in the Quran, in the riwayah. It says those people who gather gold and silver and who don't make infaq, in hell, the same gold and silver shall be melted and molten, and they will be branded on their foreheads with the same gold and silver they accumulated as well. They'll be branded on their foreheads with the same gold and silver they accumulated. But there's also respite here. When you say make infaq, infaq also extends to your families. When you buy something for your children, it's considered infaq. When you buy something for your spouse, when you keep your family happy, that is also considered infaq. But this ayah is for those people who just accumulate, stingy people. Nothing has helped a mu'min progress. Nothing has helped a mu'min grow in spiritual status like giving from what Allah has given him. An example, one of my dear friends, Allah give him a long life, mentioned, they were in Iraq. It comes back to understanding. It's a very subjective matter. It's how you relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says we were once in Iraq and we're doing the mashi. Allah give all of us tawfiq, inshallah, we're all part of the mashi. He's walking from Al-Najaf, Al-Ashraf to Karbala Al-Mu'alla. He says while we're in a group, we notice one person, he's following us closely. An Iraqi young fellow, a young boy, he says he's following us very closely. So for a few miles we ignored him. Then I thought maybe he needs something from me. It says every time we'd stop, he'd stand beside us. Everywhere we stopped, this person would stand beside us. I said maybe he needs something, he needs money. So I went up to him and says, you know what, is there anything you need? You've been following us for miles. If you need anything, let us know. He says, I don't need anything. He says, why are you following us? So he didn't say anything, we kept on going. But after a few more poles, crossed the poles, I sat him down, I insisted. It's like, what are you doing? He said, I want to make khidmah of the Zuwar. I want to make khidmah of the Zuwar al-Husayn alayhi salam. But I'm a poor young man. I don't have much money. He says, so how are you making Zuwar? He says, every time you sit down, wherever the sun hits you, I try and stand in the way of the sun. So you're sitting in my shade. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Wherever the sun hits you, I stand in front of the sun. So the sun is directly on me, but you're sitting in my shade. لِحُبِّ الْحُسَيْن, for the love of Hussein alayhi salam. comes back to understanding. Some people, when people are young, they're humorous. There's a lot of humor with young people. It's when they grow up, they realize things are not how it is. It says, Allah give me $1 million, for instance, so I can give half of it away to charity. Allah should turn around and say, I've given you 10, give 5 in charity.
Yeah.
Why wait for $1 million? Allah said, I've given you 10, give 5 in charity, and see how you behave. ये जो ठोकोले बागी जो बहाने हैं ना, ये इंसान दिल के बहला सकता है इसको. If you take it to Allah, you're wasting your time. If you take it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're wasting your time. Feeding people is one of the best respite a man can get. And feeding on the name of Imam Hussain, anything for Imam Hussain, anything you do for Imam Hussain, there's no, you can't sit down and count what happens in return. We talk about the tears for Imam Hussain. How do you account for it? We talk about the steps taken in the love of Imam Hussain. You don't account for that. There's no way of accounting for what has happened or what has transpired. Because there's no madloom like Hussain ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. No one has suffered at the hands of so many people as has Hussain ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. When people talk about how lonely Imam Hussain is, you talk about the loneliness of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam says, there came a point in the battlefield of Karbala, it was my father and 30,000 bloodthirsty people had surrounded him. Hussain ibn Ali was surrounded by at least 30,000 people who were out for his blood, waiting for a chance. You know what the narrator says? The narrator says, the one who had a sword attacked Hussain with a sword. The one who had a spear threw a spear in the direction of Hussain. The one who could fire an arrow, he shot an arrow in the direction of Hussain. He says, the one who had a pebble or a rock in his hand, he would throw it in the direction of Hussain. He says people were so desperate to kill Hussain ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says those who did not have anything in their hand, they would pick up sand from the ground and they would throw it towards, and they would throw it towards Hussain ibn Ali. Just for what? So that they get reward from Shimr and Ibn Ziyad, Namur Sa'ad and Yazid. This is how alone Hussain ibn Ali ibn Talib is. So why would it not be the case that you feed in the name of Hussain ibn Ali? And the mother of Hussain is not radi or not happy. You know what loneliness is? You know what it means to be alone? Inshallah, most of you sitting here are people with families. You have mothers at home, you have sisters at home, you have daughters at home. Those who do not have a family, may Allah give you a good family, a family that can support you and you can grow together in the love of the Ahlul Bayt. But for instance, if you have to leave your home and the only people in your home are women, you look for someone you can trust. Someone who's a family member you can leave behind to take care of the woman. If the woman needs something at home, they can call upon this male or this mahram so that their needs are met. You tell me on the day of Ashura, when he's already holding his back bent and it says, Al-ana inkasara dhahri, who does Hussain leave behind with Zainab and Uqayya and the other ladies from the Ahlul? Who does Hussain ibn Ali leave? What is this separation? With what heart did Hussain leave this to happen? Knowing full well, now that Hussain leaves this tent, Hussain is not coming back. Zainab, fi amanillah. Kulthum, fi amanillah. Sukaina, fi amanillah. Who does Hussain leave behind? Who does Hussain leave behind? Understand the loneliness of Hussain ibn Ali. جزاكم ربكم خير الجزاء سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون مات من حسين يا حسين يا حسين